Hi, it's Peg, and this is a video about gel printing and using alcohol ink as one of the products on your GelPress plate. And we are using stencils from StencilGirl products. You know, this has alcohol ink on the plate, and it is dried, and I have added stencil from StencilGirl on top of that alcohol. And now I'm going to add an additional alcohol. This is a ink from Pinata. It's a copper ink, so it has some metal elements to it. So that metallic is going to react differently than a clear alcohol ink will. It's a little more opaque than your clear alcohol inks. There are also pearlescent or pearlized alcohol inks that have mica powder in them. So I'm just going over the top of the stencil there with that copper. And I kind of want to dry between the layers. Alcohol ink tends to dry relatively quickly, but I'm not in a dry state like Arizona. I'm in Iowa and we have moisture, but I'm just rolling some more of that onto another plate. What I do is I work in between plates. I prep several and go back and forth between them. Here I still have ink on my brayer, so I'm going to add some more, and it's catching on my brayer. So I'm just putting a coat of that down, and you can see that you can make this go quite a ways, at least in my climate, where it's moist. Shell may have more problems in Arizona because she has a dry climate, but yeah, I'm still waiting for that first plate to dry down enough that I can put another coat of something over the top of that. So we both had some video issues. We did a live show, which if you want to watch both Shell and I do gel printing, just go over to Art Joyous Sharing. That is our sister channel, and you'll be able to see both of us and how we create it and what we like to do to create these types of prints. So now I'm removing the stencil. I need to make sure that the layers are dry before I come back and apply another layer of media over the top. So I'm going to grab another plate. These have alcohol ink down as a base with some paint and things over the top, and you can see I have 3 different plates that I'm working on this one. I'm going to grab some paint to lift that with, and I'm finding that this paint is rather thick. It's gotten old and it's thickened up and not really what I wanted for my gel print, but I've got it on there now, so I'm going to spread it out best I can. Add some more paint in another color to kind of thin it out. And, they're complementary colors, so they're going to mix okay. And grab a piece of paper. This is black text weight paper that I'm using to pull my print with. What you want is for that paint to saturate the paper and pull. And I didn't wait long enough. You see I have a patch there that did not lift well. So, that's what happens when you get in a hurry. But I'm going to put some more paint down and pull that whole print because, the stuff on the plate is still good. You can still, put texture and stencils and stamps and things over the tops of these lesser loved prints, and they'll be just fine. They'll still make a wonderful piece of collage or a card or whatever you want to make out of them. So now I'm working that paint into the paper fibers. I want to make sure that it's connecting well so that when I go to lift it, because paint's a plastic, it's going to stick to the surface of that paper. And you can see I've cleaned off the plate pretty well now so that I can keep moving on and creating more. I have two other plates. This one is a round, I think it might be a 4-inch round, and then the other plate I have there is a 3x5. There are all kinds of different sizes of plates. I've taken plates and cut them down to what I want to use. This happens to be a piece of Yupo paper, and it slips because Yupo is very slippery. So I just have the base for a print, and I'm going to stamp on top of that one. I'm just trying to use this extra piece of black paper, which is, again, that text weight paper, to pull whatever paint is left on the gel plate. That one, not sure the dimensions. I'll have to put some of that stuff down below for you. But I've got alcohol on the small 3x5, and I'm still doing a little cleanup on this larger plate. Just trying to get things pulled off of it. So I'm putting a layer of a neutral paint, acrylic paint, down and adding a stencil. And now I'm going to pull that paint through the stencil and open up those openings in the cuts on the stencil surface. Cleaning it out, because what I want, this is a really cool stencil with bugs, beetles, and things on it, and I want to use my bright, vivid alcohol inks in the wing area of the beetles, because they have that iridescence to their wings. So I'm just cleaning out the paint from those wing areas and leaving it on the rest of the stencil so that it will resist the alcohol ink that I'm adding to the body. And we end up with a light background and then a vibrant bug print. So I'm going to set that aside to dry again. So now we're ready to go back to our alcohol ink. This is a, I think, 8x10 maybe plate. And add another layer so that we can pull the print. So I'm talking about those paints, and I'm deciding what I want to use for my paper and my paint to pull this. And it looks like I'm deciding about more stencils at the same time. So this is a live show, and you can see that there's a lot of interaction with the people, and we're talking about what I'm doing, and they're asking questions. And if you want all of that type of content, you can go over to Art Joy is Sharing and watch the full video. I'm grabbing yellow, and I'm going to pull that print. So you just want a real thin layer of paint. You just want enough there to hydrate the inks that are underneath. And I'm going to use this craft colored text weight paper to do my pull on. And here again, I'm waiting patiently, or not patiently, but I'm waiting to make sure that that transfer goes onto my paper. And you can see I'm giving it a good amount of time. I'm checking it on the edge to see if it's going to pull. And there it is. And I really like that print. I think it's very tribal, very interesting design. So I'm going to you're going to see that print come back again because I am going to actually use some stamp offs onto that, and you'll see what I'm talking about later. So now I have my block and my stencil and this piece of paper that I had printed previously, and I'm going to add another layer to my previously printed Yupo paper, and this is a translucent paint. That means that you can see through the layer here. It's kind of a chartreusey green, and I'm just going to stamp that right over the top of that other image, because when you have it mounted on a block and you can see through it, you can stamp right down through the stencil onto the top of that image. So I'm just cleaning off my tools a little bit, and we'll move on to the next thing. So I'm picking out a few pieces of paper, and I've got this block that's been drying now for some time. So I'm going to use that same translucent green over the top to pull this print. And remember, we're marrying the paint and the paper now, the ink and the paper. And there's our print. So now I'm pulling back the plate that we had out before, and I'm going to pick up this small 3x5 piece with a piece of black text weight. And I have this small circle again that still has some paint on it. So I'm going to add a little black acrylic paint. Didn't get quite enough paint on there. It's a delicate balance between too much and too little. And I'm going to use some deli paper. No, I'm going to use some rice paper to pick that up. And there's the print on the black. Just put some black all over the plate now and reposition my stencil again. And now I'm going to pick up another print. So you see, you just work back and forth and back and forth. And, you know, you have multiple things going on. That's why I like to work with multiple plates. You can work with one plate, but the wait time, you know, you need to have something in between so that you're allowing it enough time to develop and create the layers for the printing. I really love the layers in my prints. So what I'm showing you now is where I am in the process. We're just getting started with the show, and I'm showing what I've done thus far. There may be more layers going on these, but these are where I am with layer after layer of paint and ink, and you know, getting the results I want. This one definitely needs more work. This one can use something to pull that out with, and I've got a couple of plates with some paint ready to add my alcohol ink to them. And I'm just going to pull one more print here before we get started. This is on rice paper, and it's, I think, a 4-inch round maybe, but you know, the different sizes and shapes of plates are essential for me because I really like having the plates to play back and forth, and different plates for different purposes, right? I usually mount them just on a piece of acetate, or, you know, I go get scrap stuff from the hardware store to use as mounts. They've always got a scrap barrel in the back, and you can grab some things out of there to mount things on, or just use a stamp mount for your smaller ones. Some of them come with a plastic piece that you can mount things onto. So, you know, just whatever you can use. I don't care if it's an old cutting board or what, but I like to be able to move these around because I work back and forth between my plates. So now I'm going to start adding some alcohol ink colors to my gel plate that has the stencil and paint already on it. And I'm going to use some of that pearlized ink along with some regular colored ink, and then, you know, using up that extra ink that I have on my brayer after I do my first plate, I go over to the other plate and add some color. Now I'm lifting that stencil and cleaning it off, and you can see the bugs now have color in them. Yep, showing those prints again. So that's got to dry down. You know, that's the whole process here. We have to dry between layers. That has to dry before I come back with something else and pull it. And I'm going to use a transparent paint to pull those bugs. I have this one from Paper Artsy that is a green, and I thought it would be a light green appropriate for bug beetle shells, right? So I'm going to go over this other print and get the, what was that, rice paper, and get that soaking into the surface of that rice paper so that I can pull that print. A rice paper sometimes is not the best choice on these. It tends to want to tear, but I do like this print. I do like how that turned out, and the rice paper is going to be great for collage. So I'm glad I have chosen to print some on rice paper, some on deli paper, some on tissue paper, some on text weight paper. You know, you can print on just about anything, depending on the paint and how you're doing it. I mean, I've even used a gel plate because it's flexible to print onto things like clay or around a cup. You know, there's ways of doing things. So I have another stencil. I'm adding another layer to that smaller plate, and that time I used the metallic copper, and now I'm adding that paint to my bugs. I'm going to get them on a piece of black text weight paper because I want those shiny bugs to have that color really jump at you off of that black. So we'll see. We'll see how those bugs turn out here in a minute. Just testing the edge to see if I can pull that acrylic, if it's soaking in well enough and dried enough. And I pulled the stencil off of the 3x5, and there is the bug print. Voila, I am happy with those. They are a lot of fun. So now I'm speeding things up about 8 times fast. You've seen the process now. You've seen how I go back and forth creating layers, and that's about all there is to the process. You know, paint, ink, ink, paint, whatever way you wish to lay it down. I've done it both ways by putting the alcohol ink directly on the plate and then adding paint. I've added paint first and pulled the paint up through a stencil and added ink into the stencil. You know, now I'm just using some of that paint that's on the plate to stamp with onto a print that I did earlier. And that's another way to remove paint and allow a space for alcohol ink to be added to a print. So there's the print that I did first, and now I've added that. Now I have a plate that's ready to go for printing. So I'm going back to adding the alcohol ink first, blending it, the colors, a couple different purples and a red, adding a stencil, a couple different plates that I've got in play out there. I'm going to add a metallic alcohol ink to that. This is a gold, which is going to work well with the purple tone. And you can see that it looks translucent because it's alcohol ink. And now I'm just going to pick it up with some Naples yellow on both the craft paper and the black. These are both text weight papers. So you can see, you can get a variation. Now I'm just picking up part of that print because it's still wet and I want to keep working. So this time I'm going to go to some dictionary page. This is old dictionary page. And I'm going to put some of that metallic alcohol ink down and a little coat of paint to pull with and get this onto that dictionary page, and you'll be able to see through that paper. Or rather, not through the paper, but through the layers of ink and paint to see the text on that page underneath. Just real cool, grungy look. Gives you something very antique looking. So we'll speed things back up again. And I am not going to worry about the edges on this plate because, you know, it just adds more to the interest of the print that you get. This time I'm going to add some foil to my plate and some more of those metallics and pull that paint that I just put on there through the stencil. And I'm going to use 2 pieces of paper to do that because I really want to clean those holes out in the stencil so that I can add my alcohol ink. So I'll brayer that into the background. And then, of course, we'll have to wait for that to dry. We'll have to lift our stencil, and then we'll have to use some paint to pull all of those layers together. Just cleaning off my stencil. Probably going to set this aside to dry for a bit, because you have to do that, and then add a layer of paint. And I'm going to pull that on some deli paper because it'll be great for collage. And there it is. So I'll post some pictures at the tail end so that you can see how this goes. But I've kind of told you what the process is. Now you can just watch as I speed through the rest of these prints and show you how my creations are made. And you can see how the color combinations are going together, how many times I pull before I get my final print, what the process is. These are some alcohol inks through a stencil. I'm just mopping things up with another piece of paper. Got to dry it down before I go on there with some paint, so I'm going to set it aside, clean up my stencil and keep moving.